hiked a long ways. This is one tough adventure. I dropped off the boat. Well, I'll smash this stuff down with a gun. Bushes are blowing around, probably making noise. Some nasty little squalls coming in and out. I thought I might have enough time to do one more before I go down and load up on hay and head home, so I'll squat down right here. Right here is a little easier, closer to the mic. It's a serious game trail between me and the camera. It'd be pretty funny if something came down, a bear came down or something. And the wind's going the right way. The wind's coming across way this way, so if I notice the bear coming down, it doesn't see me, I'm gonna sit here and not say nothing, let him walk right between me and the camera. Unless it's a grizzly. And probably not so much then. So, let's crack open the endless email bank and get some people heard. Fort Campbell. Mark is red. Hey Steve, thanks for what you're doing. The story I've got for you is something I've recalled before but never really talked about. I've never told anyone about this, but here you go. Back in the early 2000s, while I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, sometime before September 11th, my unit was out in the field for about a week conducting training. Random members of my infantry platoon were tasked to act as QRF, Quick Reaction Force, for our battalion, TOC, Tactical Operations Center. Basically, the admin location for this commando group, associated attached elements, etc., folks who run the war game. We'd been out there for a few days, more or less just hanging out. The TOC was typically staged in a covered/concealed area to prevent location from an enemy element, for obvious reasons. Troops in the TOC operate in tents, doing their wargaming stuff. During this time, we were in some crazy thick woods, about 100 or meters from a large open area. As an infantryman, I've been stationed in some dense shit, but this was very tight and overgrown. As it got later in the evening, I was called to the TOC to act as a runner, to literally run a message / some small commo equipment, to different parts of the unit. We, of course, had radio comms, but since the element was relatively close, I was tasked with linking up with the other element and relaying / handing off whatever in person. Whatever, I thought. I wasn't doing anything anyways except pulling security, trying not to fall asleep. So I took the info / equipment and proceeded to head out. It had gotten pitch black by the time I left the tent. After standing around waiting for some officer to get his head out of his ass, I came out of the tent, I put my NVGs on, and started moving through the dense area I was supposed to go through. After making my way about 200 or so meters through the combination of mature, tall pines and vine-like vegetation, I came to an intersection. Just a spot in the training area where dirt roads again intersected. I proceeded to the edge of the wood line, checking left and right, and started to dash across the intersection from diagonal corner to other. As I got to about the center of the intersection, the trees of the corner I was moving to suddenly shook violently with a loud grunting sound. I stopped dead in my tracks. Since it was training, we only had blanks in our weapons. We did, though, have our M9 issue bayonets on our pistol belts. I had my own knife, like most dudes, opting to not use the issued garbage, but I figured having something fixed to the end of my weapon made more sense. Being a city kid, I wasn't entirely sure what I could be facing. So, in a quick act of desperation, I attached the bayonet to the front of my M4. At least I wouldn't be facing an angry-ass deer empty-handed slash at arm's reach. As soon as I did this, the smallest trees at the beginning of the wood line to my front began shaking. Then, a low growl slash almost like a cougar or something came from the same spot. I thought, okay, that's obviously some of our scouts or an OP, observation post, watching that intersection for enemy movement, vehicle traffic, etc., effing with me, not wanting their hide compromised. We did have a small element of OPFOR, opposing forces, out there, supposedly probing our location, but I don't remember hearing of them being anywhere close. As we began to creep forward, not wanting to linger in the open area, what sounded like a couple of smallish pines began snapping. Not something a random soldier could be doing, like loud. After that, realizing I was about to have some type of encounter if I continued forward, I did a 180 and ran the F out of there. I got back to the TOC eventually, meeting another buddy outside the tent. He was like, "Dude, what the F?" I told him I spotted an enemy patrol and hunkered down while he passed, thinking it might be better to report back then, get taken out, and have to hear about that shit all night. After letting the battle NCO, sergeant in charge of running some of the TOC, know the BS enemy report, I got sent back to my security position. That was in Kentucky/Tennessee, as Fort Campbell is technically on both sides. I'd always associated Bigfoot type of stuff with my home region in the Pacific Northwest, but from the accounts you share, I guess it occurs everywhere. We had never been briefed on anything like this, never signed any NDAs or anything, but that was back then. Who knows really what the thing is? Who knows really what that thing is? I obviously didn't stick around to find out, but I do know that the whole fear thing that suddenly overcame me was very real. I didn't get any type of mental message about whatever, just a sudden fear, and like I stumbled onto something, and that shit was about to get very real. Thanks for all you do. I hope this nut gets cracked with some very specific disclosures sooner than later. I know being able to share these weird experiences seems to help out those of us who had them. Thanks again. Sean, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. You know how many other people, you know as well as I do, if there's other guys, other gals that are in that same area and have those experiences, they're listening right now. You know they're listening to this right now. Email it in. All right, guys? Email it in. Just get it out. Tell somebody. Tell your kids, tell your wife, your husband, just get it out. Don't let it take up space in your frickin' head, rent-free. My experience. Hello, I might have sent this before, but I'll send it again. Watching your channel has really got me thinking about this experience I had in the summer of '61, in which I never really gave much thought to, as I was not sure if my eyes were playing tricks on me or not. I was 15 years old and lived in Cecil County, Maryland, at the head of the Chesapeake Bay. I was always going into the woods and looking for wildlife to watch, and maybe a crow or a woodchuck to shoot with my .22 rifle, which I always carried with me. A couple of bad experiences with human predators taught me not to go unarmed back then. It was a bright sunny day early in summer, and I walked from my home following the Northeast Creek up to where it forks, and there was and is a good-sized tract of forest between Highway 40 and the old B&O railroad tracks. I would just wander through the woods, listening and watching what was going on and on. This day I heard crows. I would just wander through the woods, listening and watching what was going on and on. What was going on. And this day I heard crows mobbing something up ahead of me. Anyone that has spent any time in the woods has probably seen or heard crows going up on an owl or a hawk when they spot one. I was hoping to get a shot of the crows or whatever it was that they were after, and I followed the racket to a large tree where it seemed the commotion was coming from. I got near the tree and was looking to see what the crows were after, but could not see a thing. The wind was blowing the leaves around, and I circled around, trying to see something, but I could not see anything, not even the crows, although they were making a lot of noise. Strange. This went on for a little bit, and I was really thinking it odd that I could not see anything, even though the constant cawing of the crows did not stop, and I had a good view of the top of the tree. Silence. Just like that, the noise stopped and there was not a sound. I did not see any crows or their victim leave, but just complete silence. Weird. I started feeling strange. I started looking behind me at some trees covered in honeysuckle. The honeysuckle was very invasive and would cover trees almost completely and be hanging down around them. I saw what appeared to be two people watching me from behind a veil of honeysuckle, so as to make it hard to see more than a couple of dark shapes with one taller than the other. They appeared to be man-sized, and I thought it was a couple of guys attracted to the noise as I was. I thought it strange I could not see any color to their clothing at all, but just two dark figures. I started to say something, but the figures turned and started walking away from me. I wanted to see who they were, so I started quartering towards them to catch a glimpse once they cleared the honeysuckle, which was obscuring my view. I saw the smaller one step into the open and was amazed when it got down on all fours and stepped into a ray of sunlight so I could see that it was gray and about the size of a deer. That and the next thing happened in just a few seconds. I remember thinking, deer? No, deer not gray this time of year. And then coyote? No, way too big. And then the fear hit me and the hair on my back and of my neck stood up, and I turned around and ran to the edge of the woods and into the adjoining pasture. I had never been that afraid before, but I shrugged it off quickly. I was not aware of Bigfoot or Dogman back then, although I was aware of the Yeti and very interested in that. I don't know what the larger the figures did, as I could just see the smaller one when they started walking away. Maybe just as well. I was armed and might have been scared enough to fire a shot at something. Best not shot at all. I'll never forget that sudden silence in the woods, though, or the instant fear that overcame me when I realized I did not know what I was looking at. I've gone on to be a Marine in Vietnam, been afraid, but at least I knew what I was afraid of then. I saw a man-like creature in Vietnam too, and at close range, but that's another story. Funny, I never really thought of much of my experience in Maryland until the last few years, and I realized that perhaps I saw something unknown. You can use my name if you want. Stay safe. I can't imagine being in grizzly country and not being on edge most of the time. Bob Delk. Bob, appreciate that, man. And I don't know if you've listened to all the videos here. I mean, I know there's a shit pile of them here now, but we've had people email in about the rock apes. They called them rock apes in Vietnam. We've had a handful of vets have emailed in their experience of seeing those things and being attacked by them. Rocks being thrown, all sorts of crazy shit. So if you want to email back in, if that is what you saw in Vietnam, there's plenty of people here listening that are going to be absolutely interested in what you saw, and they're going to be hoping that you're going to share. So if that is what it is you saw then, go ahead and fire us back another email, all right? And I'll find it and I'll get it shared. But in the meantime, thanks a lot for being brave enough to come out publicly and share what you saw. It all helps, all right? It all helps. Wonder how many ticks I got crawling up my back so far. Just thought of that now. Yeah, well. Here's another one. Dear Steve, I'm not a hunter, but I've had a lot of experience with the supernatural and know how it feels to not be believed and mocked. I questioned my own sanity for years until I went to university and sat in on some paranormal psychology classes and learned that many, many others had had the same experience as I had had and still do. It confirmed to me that these things and events were real and eased my mind to no end. That is what you're doing for your group too, and I thank you for that. It's too easy. That's actually what the entire group's doing. Isn't it great? Before watching your videos, I thought I'd had only one encounter with Bigfoot. Now I'm wondering if 2 other events were him too. When I was a teenager, I was in the passenger seat and my dad was driving along the Trans-Canada Highway, just coming into Manitoba from the east, where there were short trees on one side of the road and the bald-headed prairie on the other. There's also a swampy area between the road and the actual prairie at that point. We saw a very tall man come out of the trees and onto the highway. He was very skinny and looked like he was wearing brown and torn rags. We didn't see a car and thought he needed help, so we slowed down. But then the man crossed the highway in about 3 steps and went down into the ditch and walked quickly across the swampy area and out onto the prairie. Holy shit. It was only a glimpse, but enough to see that he wasn't wearing torn rags. He had long, shaggy hair, brownish red, and we couldn't believe how fast he could get through that swamp. And where was he going in the middle of nowhere? I thought he must be a Sasquatch, but hadn't expected him to be so skinny. His arms were longer than normal too. It didn't scare us, but my dad didn't like talking about it. The second encounter happened when my fiance and I parked at the old Boy Scout camp to watch the water and talk. It started to get dark, so we were going to leave, but my fiance had to go to the bathroom and steps outside of the truck to do so. Suddenly, I had this overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. I felt very strong fear for no reason at all. It was so bad that I had to get out and throw up. Wow. Something there was very evil and seemed to be on the road we had come in on. My fiance was freaked out too, so we got back in the truck and got out of there fast. We didn't see anything, but the feeling of evil was overpowering until we got back to the main road. Now we thought we'd encountered a demon of some kind, but after listening to your videos, I'm wondering if it was a Sasquatch too. The last one happened when I was alone at home. We lived about 10 miles outside of a small town in northwestern Ontario, and my husband was working out of town for the week. One night, I heard a very loud noise coming from the bush. It sounded like a combination of a woman screaming and a wounded dog. I'd never heard anything like this before, but it sounded like someone was in trouble and needed help. I didn't know what to do. Should I go and look? Should I call the police? Why would someone be screaming like that in the bush? Was I in danger too? Should I drive into town? I didn't know what to do, so I prayed about it and opened my Bible and opened to Jeremiah 6:25. Do not go into the fields or onto the roads. The enemy has a sword, and there is a terror on all sides. I felt that was too close of an answer not to be the Lord, so I resolved to stay inside and believe that God would keep me safe. I brought my dog in for the night too, and that was when I realized that he hadn't barked at all. He was a big German Shepherd and always barked at even little things. I thought he must have been used to hearing the sound since he didn't react. It never occurred to me that he might have been afraid, although he did come in willingly when he usually likes to be outside. Again, after your videos, I'm thinking this could have been Sasquatch too. The sounds continued every night for 3 nights and then stopped. Anyway, I don't know if this helps you, but your videos have helped me. Thank you, Elaine. Elaine, every single email counts and every single email helps somebody. That's just the way it is. I appreciate you saying that in. It's kind of odd, your dad, how common is that? Your dad didn't want to talk about it. But I guess, after I saw that first one I didn't really talk about it either. I mean, especially back in the 80s, who the hell are you going to talk to, right? Who are you going to talk to about it? And I didn't have any friends, really, that ran around the woods and hunted like I did, or fished, but it is what it is. At least we're here talking about it now, right? At least it's finally happening. It's finally happening. It's mainstream. The cat's out of the bag and people are talking. You can't stop it now. And all those people laugh and scoff at all of us people who have unfortunately seen these things, well, I guess they got to eat it now, don't they? Whatever. Moving along. Hey, Steve, I've been following your channel for over a year now and decided it's time to share my story. Good for you, man. Let it rip. It was back in June of 2000 when my encounter took place. I was 1 year out of high school, and me and a buddy were driving around the country. It was a hell of a trip. We spent the entire month of June that year just driving and camping our way all over the country. And chasing chicks, weren't you? You were going on a nationwide chick hunt. There's no way you weren't. We were somewhere in Oregon. It was rainy, and it was a rainy, windy, shitty night. I've been driving for most of the night and decided to just pull off the road and sleep till morning. No point in trying to set up camp in the middle of the rain and in the dark off the side of some desolate road. My buddy didn't feel like driving at that point either, so we found a spot and parked not far off the side of the road. Again, we were in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. No GPS, no cell phones. We had an atlas with us, but my father used to use as a truck driver. That was how we navigated. Anyway, within minutes, we're both passed out. The car we had was his grandmother's 83 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. She had given him a month or so before a trip. It had old school dim headlights and crappy wipers. It was a boat of a car, but it was great for long distance cruising. So there we were, passed out in the car, in the rain for a good couple of hours when all of a sudden the car shakes. We both wake up wondering what the hell shook the car. We figured it was probably a gust of wind since it was such shitty weather. No biggie. Well, at least 5 minutes later, the whole ass end of the car got pushed about 6 feet in one direction. We both spun around and saw nothing out the back window. It was pitch black where we were. I immediately switched the headlights on and started the car. Still nothing to be seen. At this point, I'm fully awake and pretty much shitting myself, as was my buddy. The front window was a bit foggy, but for some reason, the side windows were not. I remember the next part like it happened 5 minutes ago. As I looked over at my buddy to tell him, we're out of here, I could tell something was next to his window, something huge. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My buddy was looking at me, and I was staring out his window in shock and fear. I couldn't move. I was frozen. He then turned to see what I was looking at, and at that moment, 2 giant yellow eyes appeared. But they weren't right next to the car. They were a short distance away. We were both frozen stiff. It was at this point the car got rocked again, this time to the side. Well, that was enough to snap me out of whatever trance I was in. I slammed that car into drive and floored it. I remember almost losing control of the car as we hit the wet road. I'm pretty sure my buddy pissed himself. I was shaking so bad I had a hard time steering. I drove until daybreak without taking my eyes off the road. After that night, we cut our trip short. We both know what we saw. From what we can figure, that thing was crouched down staring at us with its hands still on top of the car. And after it knew we both could see its eyes, it gave the car one last shove just to F with us. Needless to say, we did not camp another night. We stayed in hotels the next few nights until we got home to Connecticut. Until this day, I did not camp in remote areas. Wherever that thing was made it very clear we were not welcome. Until now, I've not told anyone about what happened that night 20 years ago, not even my wife. My friend has also told no one. We speak of it on occasion to each other, but all we really say is, remember that night? Not much else is needed. The way that thing shoved the car around and those yellow eyes were absolutely terrifying. It's not something you can forget. Thanks again, Steve, for allowing me to send you this email, and thank you for your time and all you're doing. It feels good to talk about my encounter, even if it's to people I've never met. Take care and Merry Christmas, John. Whew. It's quite the experience, John. And you know what? If you feel compelled to, send this video to your family. If you feel like it. Let them hear it this way. And then they can at least sift through all the other emails and see how many thousands and thousands of people are here who are not connected in any way, and they share the exact same experiences and they didn't ask for any of them. All right? I just thought of that last couple emails. Like, you know what? For all you people that have had a hard time for the first time sharing this, once you hear it shared right here, send it to the people you want to hear about it. All right? Okay. What's this? Oops. Uh-oh. That's red. I always mark them as red before I start reading. Hello, Steve. My name is Tim from Michigan. I never knew about my feelings I had about 25 years ago while I was hunting with 2 different friends in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You know, I got some good friends who have a hunting cabin property in the UP. There's lots of wolves there now. One of our friends had a house on Gooseneck Lake, and we would hunt for whitetail within about 30 miles of his house. One of the areas we hunted was next to a huge clear cut where years earlier had been clear cut and replanted. You could tell because of the trees and the rows, which doesn't happen in nature. We split up and I went to an area that looked good. After about an hour, all of a sudden I got the worst feeling of dread and shaking and sweating and thinking I had to get away now. The feeling that I couldn't get out of there fast enough, and I saw a lot of shadows, but I didn't see anything in two-legged, or deer or birds or squirrels. I fast walked back to the truck and got inside to wait for them. Even the 30-06 I was holding did make me feel safer. I didn't know why I felt that way, so I never said anything to them, and I never went back there hunting again. I'm a Michigan Thumb Huron County resident and live on Saginaw Bay. I hunt and fish the county a lot, and I love it. I first started watching your hunting channel, and then you started talking about Sasquatch and reading people's emails. Thanks to you, I now know why I felt that way years ago. I haven't had any feelings like that since, and that's fine, LOL. I never thought Huron County was a place for these beings, but you have read a few emails from Huron County, and now I'm more aware. I'd retired in December 2020, I'm 62, and I've never been west of the Mississippi. I want to see more of this great country. I built a cargo trailer to pull with my pickup and carry my Rokon and hiking equipment and to live it. I'm hoping I don't run into a Sasquatch, but oh well. Thank you for all you do. You help many people, and I'm lucky for being able to watch your show. Thank you, Steve. Also, do you keep one in the pipe with the safety on? Things happen fast. Tim, all depends. When I'm hunting by myself, yeah, I always got one in the tube because I'm always still hunting in thick timber. I'm very, very aware of my rifle, obviously. I've made a living in the woods, made a living hunting. I have a gun with me more than I don't. But when I am hunting, when I have somebody with me, I do not allow them to carry one in the tube, period. And it's just a piece of danger, right? Like, when I'm reading these emails, I just load it up and I don't have one in the tube because I'm not focused on the gun. I'm focused on this, right? More than anything. And I'm more carefree because I'm not hunting. I'm not in that locked in mode. So I'm a little more carefree when I'm doing this. So I don't put one in the tube just for that reason. But I'm in tune with my feelings and my sixth sense. So if I ever feel pressure, there's one in the tube. Hope that answers your question. Thanks again for sending that in, man. I appreciate it, and good luck on your journey. And make sure you do that. Don't just talk about it. Make sure you pack your shit up and make sure you start ripping around that country and seeing everything now. Make sure you do it, all right? Do it. Don't put it off. And that goes to everybody else who's listening. Don't put shit off. You're here. We're here to enjoy our passions. We're here to enjoy this beautiful frickin' planet and not to get sucked into getting into some habits of not doing anything but repeating. Dear Steve, thank you so much for your platform. I grew up first early years of my life on a 1,500 acre farm in southwest Arkansas near Texarkana. Been to Texarkana. I always loved the hunting and fishing when I was little with my mother mostly. The Choctaw Bayou ran right behind her house, so fishing was always one of my favorite things to do. I'll move on quickly, not to bore you. I've been sick for several days of something I can't remember what, but my dad and two older brothers had gone to Texarkana to pick up motorcycle parts from my brother's bikes. They had a little Honda 50 mini trail bike. My God, those are fun, weren't they? My brothers talked my dad into buying it for me and hoped that it would give me the urge to feel better. And it worked. When they came home, my dad unloaded that little bike and gave it to me. Whatever it was wrong with me was cured. I rode that thing all over the farm. Mind you, this is in 1972, and things were a lot different back then. One day in later afternoon, early spring, I rode my bike along the bayou to a grove of pecan trees that I often watched and hunted squirrels with my mother. I pulled up under the big pecan trees and shut my bike off. I looked about 30 yards to the edge of the bayou, and there was a tree stump I'd never noticed before. As I looked at the stump, it slowly stood up and turned and looked at me. I remember, I'm only 5, maybe 5.5, but I knew it was female. But looking into the eyes, I never got scared, but it seemed to tell me, you didn't see me and don't tell anyone. And then it turned and slowly walked to the water's edge in the water and out of sight. Then it turned and slowly walked down the water's edge, in the water, and out of sight. You mean it went underwater? Or am I reading that wrong? Looking back, I think it did so to conceal its tracks, I guess. But I didn't tell anyone what I saw for over 30 years. Then one day, my oldest brother and I were talking, and the subject of Bigfoot came up. I can't remember why, but I told him about the experience, and as I did, I actually started to cry. I don't know why, but I did. He told me that he always had an unsettling feeling of being watched while working and hunting on the backside of that bayou, and he never knew why. I've had many more encounters with these beings after. I started building a clubhouse in the bottoms of central eastern Arkansas. All but one would just seem to say, "We are here, no threat," but one that scared the absolute hell out of me. Thanks for what you do, Steve. I'm not a believer, I'm a knower, and that's okay. I can deal with that. I'm 53 now and still an avid hunter and fisherman. My wife always heard the sounds they make and seen the signs, but last deer season while bow hunting, she had her first visual, and honestly, she had to reboot before she told me about it. Thanks again, Steve, fellow hunter and outdoorsman, John Waddle. P.S. Feel free to use my name if you wish, because I really don't give a shit what other people think or believe. Good for you, John. And listen, you can't tease us. You can't tease us like that, all right? I'll say hello to your wife right now, too. Obviously, she's going to be listening to this email as well, right? And I urge both of you to email me in your experiences. Even do it in the same email. Just pass off the laptop after one of you has written one down and pass it off to your wife or to your husband and write the second one. I'm interested in hearing what scared the living shit out of you. And I'm interested in hearing your wife's experience as well. And because those emails just might help produce a missing piece of a puzzle for me or someone, then they might just help somebody, okay? So if I can encourage you, send them in, and I'll get to them, and I'll read them. I'll read them out loud, and I'll share them. Or not. If you don't want me to share them, I won't share them, all right? Thanks again, you two. Be safe. I think I'm getting caught up, actually. Oh, no, I'm not. Here's some more. There is some more. What do we got? Fishville Intruder. Hey, Steve. I have some other bizarre stories about Sasquatch, but here's just one. You probably won't read this aloud, but like everyone else, I need to get this off my chest. Admittedly, at first watching YouTube channel, I was skeptical. However, with my outright contempt for all the fools making a living off the Bigfoot tidal wave of TV and radio shows, I felt compelled to share this /par. This isn't just about me, but also my first wife, out of the 3 marriages I've had in my life, and her personal experiences as well. It all starts in Louisiana, where she lived in Alexandria, and a remote area known as Fishville, where her family owned a couple of aging rustic cabins just off the logging roads of the piney woods. The area is a plethora of dark wooded lands that even during the days can be overshadowed from the tall pines above when it's cloudless. My ex told me of her days of being a little girl until her teen years, going out by herself to explore the woods, the deeply eroded creek beds, and pine needle covered floor of the forest. Louisiana is a very strange and foreboding place, having a history of African voodoo influence, KKK activity, and the French Acadians who came from Canada and made the dismal swamps their home. With them, they brought their legend of loup-garous, the werewolf. This area is host to several former military bases used for training during World War II, such as Camp Beauregard, where nothing but concrete slabs, old barbed wire fences, and dilapidated base buildings stand as a silent reminders of history. But there's something else very weird that marks this dark, mysterious region. Since the 60s and 70s, many a teenage couple had been terrorized on a Saturday or Friday night from the back seats of their parents' cars, chased by UFOs or monsters. It's been going on a long time, too. Anyway, it was during the heyday of movies like The Legend of Boggy Creek and The Creature of Black Lake that the folk monster sensation was going on around 73, and she was going to LSU, and I was tagging along, attending some classes with her, and often starving between jobs. There were a couple acquaintances we knew We were bent and determined to solve the folk monster craze, and announced to us that as soon as winter or Christmas break took place, they were headed there to do some investigating. Well, when classes started in the spring, they did not return, and we never heard from them again. We knew for a fact they had planned on attending classes again, but they were never heard from again. I guess we were too involved in our own lives to give it much thought, but that was weird. And maybe we should have called the authorities. But what could have said? Fast forward a few years later, we were married, have 2 of 4 kids, and my wife will take a summer trip to the cabins her family owns and bring the kids with her while I finish up my work in my commercial carpet and upholstery cleaning business, and then show up later. She told me one night after a full day with the kids and meeting her mother and 2 sisters after a 5-hour drive from Dallas to Fishville, she had put the kids to bed after cleaning up after dinner and fell into an exhausted sleep. Sometime in the wee hours of the morning, she was aware of someone or something that quietly crept through the screen door of the porch and was standing in the doorway, looking down upon her and her sleeping children. It was a large dark form that she could not clearly make out, and that her eyelids were so heavy that she was helpless to do anything about it. Who or what it was lingered for a while and then drifted back into the night. In the morning, she asked her Catholic priest uncle if he had stopped in to check up on them, and when he drove in from town, he said he had not. The neighbor was not in town. Uncle John, she called him, found impressions in the dry soil around the cabin and advised my wife to keep the doors locked from now on. So it was. When I came into town, like I had many times before, her brothers might show up, so we all would party because I needed to unwind myself. So here's where it gets stranger. As a little girl, my ex would go exploring along the deep creek beds, so deep that she could not see who or what might have been paralleling her as she walked. Several times she found herself going into the inexplicable panic, sensing the presence of someone or something just out of sight and beyond the eroded creek bed from above, so she would run back to the cabin as fast as she could. Who or what had spooked her, she could never be sure, other than that she did seem to have a certain sixth sense. One night after driving earlier in the day from Dallas and bringing groceries and supplies myself, the wife and the kiddos, and her 2 sisters were all spending a very strange, quiet evening. There was no partying, drinking, or pot smoking going on, just all of us preparing dinner and getting the children bathed. There was no TV and only a radio. It wasn't on. For a very, very strange reason, a kind of muted desperation settled over all of us, and then a strange fear, as if something was about to happen. It was a suffocating silence that none of us seemed in control of, as if someone or something were out there maybe circling that old turn of the 20th century cabin. There was nothing to light up the landscape outside but a porch light above the door that did little to illuminate the inky blackness of that pine forest that transformed from being your friend during the day to night that became a blinding cloak of terror in the hours after sunset. Were the cougars out there? Probably. Bear? Most unlikely, though getting into south-central Louisiana, there have been record-setting huge black bears that have surprised ranchers and farmers when their cattle got eaten. Whatever it was, that strange, haunting night certainly was a wake-up call, not to mention the nocturnal visitor who came into the cabin while my wife had been alone with the children asleep. Was all this a trick for imagination? I don't think so. Louisiana, just as eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas, who form a tri-state point, all have their strange, upright, walking, furry monster tales to tell, repeat, with numerous newspaper articles from local sources stretching back to the late 1800s, where pioneers had their encounters with the hairy creatures of the woods. I swear there are places in those swamps where man has never set foot, and beneath that dense canopy of overhead trees that make even broad daylight into shadowy theater and gloom where lurks the unknown. Mike from Texas. All right, Mike. Thanks for that email, man. I'm not big on that walking inside the house thing on its own and standing there looking at your wife and kids. That's kind of shitty. That's begging for a hole in your head, no matter who or what you are, right? But anyway, there's a few more emails shared. I think I'm cross-eyed from reading so much. I gotta get going. I gotta go load up this pickup truck with hay. get back and get ready to go on my 8-dayer to the remote coast of British Columbia. And I'll be doing a shit pile of filming there. I'm going to be filming some crazy stuff that I don't think anybody's ever done before. And I'll save that for later. Anyway, everybody out there, thanks for sending in. Be safe. Email your experiences to sharemystory@howtohunt.com or tellmystory@howtohunt.com. And do not send a test email, all right? Copy it down. Type it clearly in the to part of your email and send it. All right? Take care.